This is the part 1, as I mentioned, of our STEM education webinar series. This is the Spectacular Science, Inspiring Problem-Based Learning. All right, so let me take this opportunity to read the session description for the part 1 of our STEM education webinar series, or Spectacular Science, Inspiring Problem-Based Learning. Okay, so this webinar will introduce, through case study examples, how the Inspiring Science project in Thailand implemented STEM within the normal science curriculum through problem-based learning, using real Thai problems and contexts for learning. So the problem-based learning models and approaches adopted by the project will be outlined and illustrated through learning resource examples and video of classroom practice. The webinar will also introduce the project capacity building models and detail the outcomes with regard the professional development of the teachers and their motivation, their achievement of their students. So participants in the webinar will be provided with exemplary teaching and learning resources. So that's why we are very excited for this afternoon, because we really deep dive with real life examples, and then we want to be able to inspire you to do also problem-based learning with your students. Okay, so let us get to know our resource speaker. We are very, very fortunate to have with us this afternoon Dr. Mark Wendale, a senior specialist at the Simeo STEM Ed Center. So let me just read the short bio profile. So Dr. Mark Wendale is a senior specialist at the Simeo STEM Ed Center. Prior to this, he was the director of international science education and STEM programs at the Center for Science Education at Sheffield Hallam University in the UK. So over the past 25 years, Dr. Mark's work has included running national and international STEM education programs, the CPD of STEM teachers, STEM curriculum projects, development of STEM teaching and learning resources, CPD for school leaders in leading change, public engagement in STEM activities and research. So as you can see and as you can hear from me, Dr. Mark has been very, very busy, and he has a very illustrious professional career. Dr. Mark also led the National Science and STEM Education projects in partnership with the British Council in different parts of the world, like Thailand, Malaysia, Brunei, Philippines, Vietnam, China, Sri Lanka, India, among many, many others. That's why we are very, very happy to get to know Dr. Mark Wendale. So without further ado, let us get to know and let us see on our screen Dr. Mark Wendale. Dr. Mark, good afternoon. Hi. And thank you for being with us this afternoon.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you very much.
All right, so I'll give the floor to you, Dr. Mark, so that we can already start our session for this afternoon. We are very excited to hear from you.
Okay, thank you all very much, and it's a real honor for me to be able to speak to you this afternoon, and hopefully also be able to answer all of your questions. I'm as you can tell, I've been working in the region for many years now, and what I'm going to be introducing you to this afternoon through examples is a project which I was involved in running here in Thailand, where I'm now based, as you can tell, over a number of years. So I think it's important that I first of all introduce you to my idea of what STEM is, okay, and something which I'm very comfortable with as a STEM educator and originally a STEM teacher. As we all know, that STEM stands for science, technology, engineering, and maths. But the definition which I feel most comfortable with is it's the application of one or more STEM subjects to solve real world problems. And that definition, therefore, means that by using problem-based learning approaches in our classrooms, in our normal curriculum time to teach the normal curriculum that we're teaching, we can implement STEM in our classrooms. And I think that, to me, is really important. It's really interesting that these objectives were the reason why we ran the STEM program in the UK, to increase the motivation and achievement of students, their participation in STEM subjects and careers, to increase the number of underrepresented groups in STEM subjects. And I think that's a very important objective. And also, of course, to address the workforce needs with regard to STEM and the STEM industries and our national economies. And it was really interesting that when I looked at the objectives for my own centre, the CMEO STEM Ed Centre, that they were the same. And so I think it's, these are common objectives across the world with regard to why we are introducing STEM into our teaching and learning experiences in STEM subjects. And that is, I think, why problem-based learning provides us with a learning model or learning models which will help us to implement STEM in our classrooms. Problem-based learning is a constructivist learning model, and I will emphasize that as I introduce the models to you. It develops the learning through real-world contexts and applies learning to solve real problems, developing the high-order thinking of students and their deep understanding of the subject. And at the same time, we're developing those skills which employers really need from the employees of the 21st century, those 21st century skills. I'm going to introduce how we did it with one in particular, project in particular. It was called Inspiring Science, and we ran it over a 4-year period here in Thailand. And what I'm going to do is introduce you to the models of capacity building that we used, the project model, and examples of the problem-based learning experiences that we developed to support the implementation of problem-based learning in the normal curriculum. And I think that's really important, is it was within the normal curriculum and not just as something which often happens as an extracurricular activity which engages much fewer students in the learning experiences. The key components of the project were the development of learning resources to support implementation in the classrooms, and they were very extensive learning resources to support implementation, as well as the development of teacher support resources as well. Something which was central also was the capacity building of a core team in Thailand, of trainers and of teachers. And I'm a firm believer in capacity building, not just the running of one-off training and then leaving teachers to fend for themselves, as it were, after they've had their training. So I think it's really important for me is that whole idea of capacity building. And what it led to was sustainable support for science teaching and learning across the country in Thailand. And the way that we did it, as I've alluded to, is that we developed a core group of a group of teachers as expert curriculum developers. Okay, so we really capacity built them to be a core group within the country. And through them and with them, they developed very high quality, inspiring learning and teaching resources, which were designed to help teachers teach the whole of the lower secondary science curriculum in Thailand, the whole of grade 7, 8 and 9 science curriculum, and also to implement STEM within the STEM curriculum in upper secondary schools as well. Then these resources, through capacity building of trainers and teachers across the country, were disseminated and embedded into the practices of the teachers. And the teachers went through what a process which took them from being, first of all, adopters of the learning resources and of the learning approaches, then adapters, and then ultimately also many of them became developers themselves of their own learning experiences. And so the professional development program was supported through the learning resources and through electronic learning communities, teachers working as reflective partners and being mentored as they implemented in their classroom. So it was very much a capacity building program that happened to disseminate and embed the practices in schools. And what that led to was developing the scientific and STEM capabilities and 21st century skills of the students that those teachers were working with. And of course, they are the workforce of the future. They are going to make that difference within the STEM industries and within the economy of the country. What we were able to do through the learning models that we were using and through the learning experiences that we were developing to implement those models was to be able to implement all those good practices, which I know that you are all trying to implement in your classrooms. Context-based teaching and learning, inquiry-based, problem-based, student-centered teaching and learning approaches through the use of two different models of problem-based learning, one of which was an adapted 5E learning cycle, which is both a constructivist, inquiry-based and problem-based model in the way that we've adapted and developed it. Engaging also students in carrying out scientific inquiry, where appropriate engineering design to solve the problems, and of course through those experiences developing the students' 21st century skills, their critical and creative thinking, and also their information technology skills, their ICT skills. As I've mentioned, what we first of all did before we started the program and dissemination program was we worked with a group of 40 master science teachers, some of which were also doing doctoral programs at local universities, the ministry staff, the OBEC staff. We developed them as expert curriculum writers. In other words, that we developed their skills to be able to write the learning resources which would be used by the teachers in their classrooms following their development. And I think that was a really important starting point for the project. So it meant that the teachers would, following their development, would have learning resources to help them implement effectively in their classrooms. And we did this through 3 workshops per year. In the beginning it was 4, but then they became 3 workshops per year, where I worked with the groups and facilitated their development and continued supporting them between workshops. It was very much a step-by-step approach. So they had to first of all implement in their own classrooms to be able to develop their experience and expertise of the pedagogical approaches and models, and following that we then developed them to be able to write effectively these high quality resources. So they became a sustainable, high performing team, and they really were. It was wonderful to see how they developed and how they grew in their confidence, competence, expertise. It was really wonderful working with them as a team. And what they developed was 27 comprehensive units, which covered the whole of the lower secondary science curriculum. And those units all integrated and implemented inquiry-based learning, student-centered learning, scientific inquiry through a 5E learning approach. They were problem-based, so they involved students in solving real-world problems, and where appropriate, they also were involved in solving those problems through engineering design, and of course implementing STEM and developing those 21st century skills. But the key was they targeted the normal curriculum, and they were designed to be used to teach that curriculum in the time that the teachers would normally use to teach the topics that they were covering. Again, something which was really important was that the inquiries that the students were involved in were accessible to all students across the whole country. So we were using equipment and materials, resources that every teacher could access no matter where they were in the country. And I think that was very, very important. The learning resources included teacher PowerPoints, but as you'll see from the example I'm going to show you, those PowerPoints didn't have information on. They were mainly composed of questions to scaffold the students' learning through the problem-based learning experience, the 5E model and the 4-stage model, which I'll introduce you to later. Also, they in some cases included video clip to stimulate and to introduce the context and problem to the students. They had student support sheets, activity sheets for the students to use when involved in activity. And also there were homework activity sheets and end of unit quizzes, or what you might call summative assessments for the students to do at the end of each of the units. What was really important was that every unit was set within a real life context in Thailand, so the students could really relate to those contexts. They were so relevant, so no student was going to say, why are we doing this? They really could see the relevance and importance of the work that they were doing in the classroom. What this allows, context-based learning allows, is for students to make those conceptual interconnections. It enables them to build the big ideas which we want them to build in science. And it's very important that the contexts are integral to the whole learning experience, not just something which is introduced at the beginning of the unit or the learning experience and forgotten about, but something which runs through the whole learning experience and engages the students in that context. And so the content is integrated within the context, and the context within the content. And The model that we used with the grade 7, 8 and 9 project was a 5E learning model, which of course originally was developed by Bybee and his team in the US. But what we've done is we've adapted it, maybe further improved it, developed it, so that it's become an inquiry-based model and a problem-based model, and it incorporates the learning within real and the problems within real learning, real contexts for learning. So the 5E model, as many of you will be aware, involves 5 stages: engage, explore, explain, elaborate, and evaluate. And I'll illustrate that through the example which I'm going to show you now. So please bear with me a moment while I change my my PowerPoint and put up my first PowerPoint. Okay, in the example which I'm going to show you, it's part of the normal curriculum, as I've mentioned. It's helping the teacher to teach what they would normally do with regard to forces. Okay, and the Newton's laws with regard to forces. So it's a real context in this case, which is going to be introduced to the students. It's 4 learning episodes. It's composed of 4 learning episodes. The first learning episode's introducing the term of force and helping the students to analyze the range of bridge designs and investigate forces acting on a model bridge. So it's again these concepts to do with force, which are key to, you know, and core to, I think, every science curriculum in the world, are being introduced through a real context, which is introduced to the students at the engage stage of the first learning episode, and continues through not just the first learning episode, but through the whole of the unit that the students are involved in experiencing. And as you can see here, the problem is that a bridge has become broken in an area of the south of Thailand, in Songkhla province, and the villagers need that bridge to be to either be replaced or repaired, because it's so important to the community. And the students have been are working for a company which has been which has gained the contract to help them to design and build this new bridge, which, as you can see, is seriously damaged and needs repair. But the students have the option, if they wanted, to change the bridge. And so at this stage of the engage, what we're also doing is eliciting the ideas of the students by saying to them, but is a rope bridge the best sort of crossing for the river here? What type of bridge could we build? So we're eliciting their ideas at this stage about the different bridges, the designs of bridges, and so on. And further asking questions with regard to other types of bridge that might be used in other parts of the world or the region. And then asking further questions to elicit their ideas about what sort of bridge do they think they might be appropriate, what will they need to carry out to design that bridge, how long will it take to build it, etc., etc. So we're getting the students at this stage to think, to elicit their ideas, so that we can identify the pre-learning, the pre-ideas or mis-ideas that the students might be coming with. Then at the explore stage, the students are going to carry out experiments to introduce them to the forces acting on a bridge. So as you can see, there's an activity sheet which is introducing the students and helping the students to carry out experiments which will be looking at the forces acting on the bridge. And then if very importantly, at the third stage, after they've explored the forces, they are then having to explain those forces, okay, and how those forces contributed to causing the bridge to break, okay, and how they could make this, they think at this stage, how they could make the bridge stronger. So that's really important, that at this stage we're encouraging the students to explain what they've learned. And as you can see, the questions going to from lower to higher levels of thinking. So at the end, the how question is really making the students to think. And then, of course, they're going to apply what they've learned at the elaborate stage to think about how the shape of the bridge might be affected, and also to think about how the forces are acting on the bridge and evaluating what they've learned through the learning experience with regard to the forces. So what the teachers are doing here is doing what they would normally maybe do in terms of engaging students in developing their ideas to do with forces, normally with sandbags and sandbags and spring balances. But in this case, the students are looking at it in terms of using very simple materials, but through the context of the bridge. And so you can see here in the activities that the students are doing, that they are doing what you would normally do with sandbags, but they're relating it to a bridge and the forces acting on the bridge. And the key to making it inquiry-based are the questions both on the activity sheet and the questions which are on the slides. The other learning episodes involve the students in taking their understanding further. So in other words, the students in episode 2 are carrying out investigations which are looking at the effects of the height of the supports or towers of the bridge and the number of towers used. So the students at this stage are going to be carrying out scientific investigation to be able to identify the effects of bridge design, in other words, numbers of towers or height of towers on the forces with regard to the bridge. I'm not going to go through the whole learning episode, but that's what the students are doing to further develop their understanding of forces and their effects on the bridge. Then the students are involved in thinking about gravity and weight and mass and the effects of weight on the bridge. So the students are going to be thinking about both the weight of the bridge itself and the walking platform of the bridge and the weight of the people crossing the bridge on the forces acting on the bridge and how those will affect the design of the bridge. So that finally, at episode 4, the students are solving the problem. The students are involved in designing their own bridge. The first stage is, again, of course, as you can see, at every engaged stage, the students are reintroduced to the context, and also their ideas are elicited before they then carry on into the explore, explain, elaborate, and evaluate stages. So the students, once again, at this stage, are going to be paper designing their bridge initially, explaining how it works, okay, to to others and other groups and getting feedback before they then finally then modify their designs and build their models so that they can share those with their both not just the other members of the group, other teams, but also the villagers, people who are invited in to look at the designs that the students have identified for solving the problem. And let me just show you again how that is done. Again, through an activity sheet. So again, the context is identified. The context, which has continued through all the learning episodes, is further emphasized at this stage, and the students are, of course, introduced to the equipment that they might use to build their models from the designs that they've developed. And of course, we can see that the students are using very simple equipment that any teacher could access in any part of the country. And most importantly as well, is that there is an assessment rubric to be used during the evaluation stage when the students are presenting their designs. So as we can see from this example, the students have been involved in a learning process which has taken them through the process of solving a real problem. And at the same time, they've been developing the knowledge and understanding, which is key to the curriculum that the teachers are teaching, to be able to solve that problem. And they've been going through the processes of inquiry-based learning, scientific investigation, and engineering design to solve the problem. We also used a problem-based learning approach for upper secondary students as well. And this time, again, of course, it was context-based, real problems in a real situation for the students. But this time we were using a 4-stage PBL model. Again, a model that I've been involved in developing with my colleagues at Sheffield Hallam University. Actually, this model we developed in 1995 for a national project in the UK. Well, in fact, no. In fact, we first developed it as a team on a project called Problem Solving with Industry in 1989, dare I say. But we further developed it for a project in 95. But this 4-stage model was used to develop the STEM skills of the students so that they could carry out STEM projects within the normal curriculum time, within the normal curriculum, okay, and used to motivate the students with regard to STEM. It's a 4-stage model where in the first stage, the students are introduced to the problem and context. Okay, this is really important that we build up the problem, make it inspiring through a real context and a real problem that needs to be solved, related to the locality where the students are working in, or to their country, or even to do with a global problem. Then the students develop their background knowledge, understanding, and skills related to the problem. So they first of all are developing their understanding of the problem, and then developing their knowledge, understanding, and skills to solve the problem. And that background knowledge and understanding is that which is central again to the curriculum, okay, that the teachers are having to teach. The students then at stage 3 are solving the problem, and of course at stage 4 they're communicating their solutions to the problem. This time I'm going to show you how this was done through a video. So I'm going to show you a video which was for Al Jazeera, Al Jazeera News. As you know, it's an international news organization who broadcast across the world, and I'm going to show you the video that was filmed. I was actually behind the camera, sort of directing this, I suppose. But we made it for Al Jazeera as part of a series that they had, which was called Rebel Education. So in other words, they were looking at sort of new aspects of education. And the teacher who was filmed here and the school that was filmed was in northern Thailand, near the Mekong River. And what I would mention is that the sound may not be very high, but that doesn't matter because everybody's speaking Thai, and what you do have are the captions and the subtitles, so you know what people are saying and you know what's happening. Okay, but it is in Thai, but the subtitles and so on, as you can see, are in English. So I'm going to show you a short part of the video now of one of the PBLs, the problem-based learning experiences being used in the classroom.
สวัสดีครับสวัสดีค่ะเนี่ยนะคะท่านรองอำนาจนะคะแล้วก็หน้านี้หน้าน้ำเนี่ยเดี๋ยวนักเรียนก็จะได้ไปเห็นเนี่ยน้ำท่วมแล้วเนี่ยครับน้ำท่วมแล้ว อันนี้เป็นที่พบปลูกกันนะครับเวลาท่วมมันขึ้นท่วมครับท่วมหมดนะครับทำการให้ได้ปลูกผักตลอดทั้งปีให้มันมีรายได้เข้าครอบครัวทั้งปีแต่ตรงนี้รายได้เราก็เริ่มลดลงแล้วต้องกินของเก่าแล้วเพราะว่าปลูกก็ไม่ได้เนี่ยน้ำนะครับปกติแล้วถ้าขึ้นมากกว่านี้นิดนึงเนี่ยท่วมหมดเลยครับแถวนี้ครับแล้วเราจะมีวิธียังไงนะครับเราจะใช้เทคโนโลยีรุ่นใหม่ๆเราจะมาทำยังไงนะครับก็อยากให้น้องๆเอาตัวนี้ไปเป็นข้อคิดว่าไปเป็นแนวคิดว่าเราจะทำยังไงที่ปลูกแล้วก็มีข้าวโพดสลับไปด้วยเนี่ยก็คือแนววิธีคิดของพี่น้องเกษตรกรคือถ้าเราจะปลูกแต่ต้นหอมเฉยๆเนี่ยเวลาฝนมาลมมาฝนมาอย่างน้อยๆก็กันได้น้อยได้มากก็ยังดีกว่าที่จะไม่ต้องกันเลยนะครับทีนี้เราลองคิดช่วยกันนะคะเราลองระดมสมองแล้วก็ลองสืบเสาะว่าเราจะมีวิธีการอย่างไรให้ช่วยเกษตรกรให้พ้นวิกฤตในจุดนี้ได้เนาะเดี๋ยวเราไปคุยกันที่ในชั้นเรียนนะคะว่าเราจะระดมสมองกันยังไงสืบเสาะกันยังไงแล้วเราค่อยเชิญแล้วพอเราได้คำตอบแล้วเราก็เชิญวิทยากรเชิญท่านทั้งหมดนะคะที่เป็นชาวไร่ชาวนาเรานะคะไปฟังงานของเราว่ามันเป็นยังไงที่เราสืบเสาะไปแล้วเราช่วยยังไงบ้างแบบนี้เนาะเดี๋ยวเรากลับเลยเนาะค่ะขอบคุณครับไม่พอกินแล้วก็ไม่พอขายใช่ไหมคะเอาแล้วทำยังไงอีกอะไรคะ
นิวตันใช่ไหมทีนี้ตัวเนี้ยเราใช้ทั้งหมดเราจะปลูกผักทั้งหมดกี่อันกี่ประมาณน้ำหนักเท่าไหร่ของช่องนี้ใช่ไหมคะตัวนี้ก็จะเต็มใช่ไหมสรุปปลูกเจอตรงนี้ใช่ไหมเอาทำไมต้องสลับเพราะว่าไฟมันเป็นแนวให้บาลานซ์ให้สมดุลแต่ว่าลอยได้นี่ใช่ไหมถ้าเกินนี้จมไหมมีสิทธิ์จะจมก้อนหินวางตรงกลางได้ไหม
Okay, I'm just going to move it on a moment so we can see the results of the students' solutions. Sorry. Okay.
Kêu nào trái bánh tháp giàu chẳng. เราลองสมมติว่ามันมีลมพายุหรือฝนตกแรงๆเนี่ยจะรอดไหมเยอะเลยไม่โจมไปโจมจะมาเลยพอมาเห็นทางอาจารย์พาน้องๆนักเรียนได้คิดแนวทางอย่างเงี้ยผมว่าเป็นแนวทางที่ดีและก็น่าจะสานต่อและก็ขอฝากว่างานวิจัยเราและขอให้ทำให้ครบวงจรนะครับคือไม่ใช่ว่าทำแต่แค่นี้พอเห็นว่างามแล้วผมอยากให้ไปต่อว่าเราทำแล้วเนี่ยเราได้ผลผลิตเท่าไหร่นะครับถ้าว่าเราขายเนี่ยเราได้เท่าไหร่ในขนาดเนี้ยนะครับแล้วพวกผมเนี่ยยินดีที่จะเอาวิชาหรือว่าความรู้ที่ทางโรงเรียนกับทางนักเรียนวิจัยเนี่ยจะเอาไปต่อยอดเพื่อจะได้แก้ไขปัญหาให้พี่น้องเกษตรกรต่อไป
ในกลุ่มของผมที่ของพวกผมตรงนั้นมันที่ต้อง7 ไร่โอ้โห7 ไร่แล้วพวกผมจะไปทำเหมือนกันทำอย่างนี้จะเอาเข้าไลบรารีพวกผมจะปลูกเข้าไลบรารีใส่จะทำเหมือนกันเพราะว่าพัสดุอย่างอื่นเราหาได้ง่ายเพราะว่าแม่ไผ่พวกผมก็มีแม่ไผ่ก็มี
ซึ่งการทำงานนี้นะครับจะทำให้พวกเราได้รู้ว่าการทำงานเป็นทีมถึงแม้มันจะมีเวลาท้อหรือเวลาอะไรที่เราแบบมีปัญหาอะไรกันแล้วก็แบบคุยกันว่าควรทำอย่างนั้นควรทำอย่างนี้ แล้วก็แก้ปัญหาร่วมกันไปได้
ซึ่งทำให้เราแบบได้เงินค่าขนมมาโรงเรียนเพิ่มขึ้นอีกอะไรแบบนี้ค่ะก็คือแล้วก็สามารถแก้ไขปัญหาก็คือมันทำให้เราเกิดความภาคภูมิใจในตัวเองได้ด้วยว่าเราเป็นเด็กเรายังสามารถที่จะแก้ไขปัญหาให้กับผู้ใหญ่
The team have developed high quality comprehensive teaching resources. They have
Okay, I'm going to stop it there, but you can see that the teacher who was one of the writing team for the AgriRaft problem-based learning experience also was part of the team that wrote the rope bridge and obviously used it in her own classroom. She's a very, very talented physics teacher, and it was such a pleasure working with her and the physics team, as well as the other teams as well. You know, they really were very, very good to work with. I was very, very impressed with them. Can I just check? Is the PowerPoint up now? That was just one example of one of the problem-based learning experiences that we developed with the team of teachers, the teams of teachers for upper secondary. And of course, this example was one that was both used within and beyond the classroom, because of course it required the students to be growing plants and so on, which of course doesn't happen within a single lesson. Other examples, though, were used within normal teaching time, so that the students were getting that problem-based learning experience in the senior high school environment as part of the normal curriculum. And what the students were involved in was solving those real problems. You can see that was a real problem which was very important to their local community. It was scaffolded through questions. The students were involved in inquiry, in engineering design, in communicating their solutions and evaluating those. It was embedded in the normal curriculum. The way that we disseminated these across the country was by training trainers within each of the education areas. There are 225 education areas in Thailand, and we worked with the master teachers and teacher supervisors in all of those education areas. And we capacity built them over the 3-year period to be able to train teachers within their education areas. And there were 1,500 or so teachers that we trained as part of that program. And what really happened was they developed real ownership for the implementation in their education area. They developed really strong networks with their schools within their area. They worked with 10 schools per year. And we felt that was really important, that they didn't have too many schools to work with each year, but we worked with 10 each year, training 2 teachers from each school at least, so that those teachers could work as reflective partners in their schools. They could plan together, they could observe each other's lessons, reflect together, action plan further together, and so on. And the supervisors or trainers mentored and supported them through those processes. That's now led to what we call professional learning communities in schools in Thailand. And I think that was really important, that rather than the teachers being trained on their own, going back to school on their own, and facing those challenges of being a teacher on their own doing it, it meant that they could work together as a reflective partners within their school, but also as a network of teachers in their education area. And there were 7,500 schools involved in the project over the first 3 years of the project, and 15,000 teachers developed. And then those teachers we continue to work with in the 4th year of the project. As I think is really important that you're doing as a network with the as a KaSaMa community, is that this was supported again through electronic means, through the use of Facebook, so that there was a project Facebook, but also Facebook for each of the education areas. So the teachers could continue to work together, to help each other, to share experiences. And it was really powerful to, in terms of supporting teachers. Everything that we did through the course of the project was evaluated, so that as we went through the 4 years of the project, we were constantly getting feedback, so that could then be used to further develop, improve the project. So that started with baseline research. So from that baseline research, we identified the needs of the teachers, and we also identified why previous projects may not have been quite as successful as they could have been. We evaluated the writing workshops, the trialing of the resources, the trainers and dissemination training that the trainers ran themselves, and we evaluated the implementation and embedding. And that was done through an independent team of evaluators. And that influenced that continued development of the project. And I think that's really important. Very often projects are evaluated at the end, and it's too late to make any changes then. Whereas if you've got that constant evaluation happening throughout the project, it can inform the further development as you progress through the project. What we found was students' ownership of the science work was so powerful, because they were solving real problems, which were really important. So that ownership developed. And I know when I first implemented problem-based learning in my own classroom, dare I say it, in, was it 1987, I had the same experience. It was so powerful. The students were coming to my room, knocking on the door, wanting to come in because they wanted to continue with their work and solve that problem. And that really creates that motivation of the students. And highly motivated students are high achieving students. So it led to higher achievement in science. And this was something which I always said to my staff when I was a leader, school leader, was that high achieving students, highly motivated students become high achieving. And that helps to raise the achievement of our students in our schools, that motivation. It also helped to develop greater awareness and interest in science from the students, and that sense of success, that they'd achieved something. Every group solves a problem. They will all come up with different solutions, as you could see from the different designs of the rafts by the students. And it helps to enrich our science curriculum. And these are just some of the outcomes that we identified from using these experiences, both with the grade 7, 8 and 9 students using the 5E problem-based learning model, and with the senior high school students when we were using the 4-stage model with those students. If you want to, contact me, you're very welcome to contact me at any time for further information and support. And I am hoping that to work with folks in the future in the Philippines to to further support developments in the Philippines. But if you do want to contact me through email or through line, for example, then you can use this contact information to contact me. But I hope that's just given you a taste of the use of problem-based learning within the normal curriculum, the normal science curriculum, in the normal time that the teachers have to teach the curriculum. And as I've mentioned, as part of the project in Thailand, we developed so many units to support the implementation. I think that's really important, because very often we've observed, and that's what happened in Thailand before, was that teachers would go on training and then they'd go back to school, they'd use the exemplars used on the training, and then when they had to develop their own learning experiences, they found that they didn't have time, or they didn't have the deep enough understanding to be able to develop their own resources, and so ultimately things tended to peter out. Whereas by having the learning resources, comprehensive learning resources, the teachers in Thailand had that opportunity to extensively implement in their classrooms. And then, though, what ultimately happened, which we found which was really illustrated when we had a conference at the end of year 3 of the project, that teachers had gone through the process of adapting the resources that they'd been provided with, but then developing their own using the same models. And I think that was really significant. Not all teachers get to that stage, but some do. But at least they become, first of all, adopters, then adapters, and some will become developers. So I hope that that's helped you. And of course, now it's time for you to ask questions, and I know that folks have been looking at the questions you've been posting in the chat box for me to answer, and I hope that I'll be able to answer as many as all of the questions if possible, or certainly as many as possible. Thank you.
Right. Thank you very much, Dr. Mark. Indeed, very inspiring and spectacular to hear those real life and problem-based learning examples from you. So at this point, I'd like to call on Mr. Ramon Sanchez, who will be moderating our Q&A session. All right, so take it away, Sir Ramon.
Hi, thank you for that, Ian, and thank you, Dr. Mark Wingdale, for that very, very inspiring sharing of this project you had in Thailand. And I hope we could replicate this one in one way or another, similar practices here in the Philippines. So again, we will be entertaining questions from our viewers. So if you have questions, please feel free to type them in our comment box, and we will try to address them as best as we could. So yeah, we already have questions actually. Okay, from Sir Nelson Jr. Talamor, how do we integrate STEM education or problem-based learning in online classes?
Okay, I think that's a really good question, and of course it's so important for all teachers today in the current situation. If you think about the example I shared with you, that can be introduced to the students online. You can go through the same processes online. The students could be building their bridges, for example, online. But when it comes to the experiments or the investigations, doing the measuring, of course, they will not have spring balances, for example, at home. So what you can do as a teacher is you can actually do that for the students, on video in a live classroom. So you can be doing the measuring, the students can be recording their results, but then of course the students will be developing their explanations. And similarly, the students can plan their scientific investigation in their teams online, and then you can say, well, obviously, we can't do every investigation, but I'm going to just select one, and we're going to follow that investigation, and I'm going to do it, and you can take your measurements and so on, and you can record the measurements that I make. And so it means that the students unfortunately don't get the hands-on experience of doing the measuring with the spring balances because they don't have it, but they still get that experience of having to analyze the results, interpret the results, develop their explanations, and then solve the problem. And the students could use materials at home to build their bridges, to solve the problem. The students can work in their groups online, and they can develop their presentations, they can develop their models, they can do their presentations online. You'll see that the equipment that they were using was very simple, and it can be adapted. The ice cream sticks are very accessible in Thailand, in every community, where you can buy those because they're used within the communities, or you could use chopsticks instead, but they'll have string. They have string that they use, or twine, or wool, or cotton, at home, which they can use to be able to build their bridges. So they can still go through that problem-based learning experience electronically at home, and using their devices if they have them, using their computers at home. Okay.
Thank you for that answer. We have another question from Ms. Marisol Andrada. Learners are actively involved in the learning episodes. It is an authentic assessment of learning. How was the international and national standardized assessments assessed?
Okay, well, obviously, when you're going through these problem-based learning experiences, there are opportunities for you to assess the students at every stage. Okay, through the questions that you use, which are on the PowerPoint slides, through the questions you're using when you're facilitating, through the questions which are on the activity sheets. So you can be formatively assessing the students throughout the process. And you can, of course, be summatively assessing at the evaluation stage when the students are presenting their solutions to the problem. So when you're thinking about in international levels and standardizing the assessment, well, of course, for example, in the UK or in other countries, what we have to do is we have to assess the students against the indicators, okay, that we have within the curriculum. And of course, what we can do here is, of course, those indicators will be covered by the learning experiences. And of course, what we're then doing is we're using the activities that the students are doing to assess those students for those particular standards and indicators that we're using. And then, of course, what we have to do is we have to moderate those. So, for example, in the UK, we moderate within the school, and we moderate between clusters of schools, and then we have external moderators moderating the clusters. So it's something that we've done in the UK now for many years. It started in the 1980s, actually, when I was teaching, and it's become something which is well established, is that school moderation, that cluster moderation, that external moderation, to ensure that standards are maintained and quality of assessment is maintained. Also, with each of these units, the students were doing what we called a quiz, but essentially it was a test. Okay, so again, that was using the type of assessment that is used in Thailand for ONET assessment, which students are assessed in every year in science, and of course the students did the ONET tests as well. And what we found from the ONET results was that in the schools that were evaluated by the external evaluators, they found that in every school that they evaluated, there was an increase in students' performance in the ONET tests, the national tests, which every student in Thailand does in February, March time every year. Okay, I hope that's answered your question.
Yeah, that's a very nice news, good news regarding the assessment of these types of projects. And we'll move on to the question of Miss Melanie August Jr. How many hours did you allot for the sample activities shared in the presentation, bridges and forces, and the flooding?
Okay, let me put up the an example if I can. So what I'll do is I'll just start I'll start sharing again. Or am I still sharing? I can't remember. Let me just put up an example of a teacher's guide for you. Is that on the screen? Can I just check? Is that on the screen? Yep. I think it's still on the screen.
Yes, it's on the screen.
It's on. Okay. So what you can see is a teacher's guide here, which shows this was actually for the final learning episode, and the teacher's guides were designed to take any teacher step by step through the learning process, and that included how long each stage would take. Okay. When the teachers developed the complete learning unit, and I should have actually prepared and to put on the screen a unit guide, which shows a complete overview of the complete unit. What the teachers were doing when they were developing these units, and what I insisted on, was that they actually used the time for the complete unit, which was specified in the IPST textbook, which many teachers follow, in terms of how much time should be spent on the unit, on the topic. And so there was both guidance for each of the episodes, guidance for each of the stages, but also the total time was that which was normally used within the normal curriculum time for teaching the topic. Okay, I know I've not answered your question fully because I didn't actually prepare to put up on screen an overview for the unit. So I do apologize there that I've not done that. But that's what we did. Was I felt that was really important. Okay, because the first thing that any teacher will say is, I can't do this, I don't have time. And so what we had to be able to show was that it took the same amount of time that they would normally use when teaching this topic using the IPST textbook. Okay, and I felt that was very, very important.
Yeah, thank you for that, sir. It looks like from what you showed us that the 5E does not necessarily fall within one classroom encounter. It could spread into several classroom
Yes.
encounters. Okay. So
And
another question.
can I just pick up your points there? I think that's a very good point to make, because many teachers I work with across the world are used to just one lesson learning experiences. Okay, one lesson, one lesson, one lesson, one lesson. What we have to show in any lesson in the UK, for example, when we're being inspected by inspectors or by our school head teachers or heads of department and so on, is progression in learning. And what you will have seen there, that there would be progression in learning, even if the students only were involved in the engage stage and the explore stage. But what you've then got is not only a progression in learning from through those stages, but then when you pass on to the next lesson, you're picking that up and you're taking the learning progressively to higher and higher levels of thinking and higher levels of understanding. So you've got that continuity in progression in learning as you progress through the learning experience. And what the Learn app does is it provides that continuity between lessons. Okay, so I'm really pleased that you raised that particular issue about it maybe running over a series of lessons. And I know that's been a challenging concept for teachers. I'm currently working in Kazakhstan, where they are used to single lessons and they don't think beyond the single lesson. And this provides that continuity. Okay.
We'll move on to our next question from Ward. Well, it's good afternoon. I just want to ask, why is it that Thailand uses the 5E model when other ASEAN countries, especially the Philippines, are now using the 7E model? Would there be any difference?
Actually, it's very interesting that you asked that question. Because the history behind the project was that I'd been running another project for the Ministry of Education in Thailand, and a group of teachers and the ministry came over to the UK as part of that project. And what we shared with them at Sheffield Hallam University at my centre was the projects that we were running in the UK. And one of those projects was a project which we called Wicked Science, which was using a 7E model of learning. And they really liked it. And they said, oh, we need this in Thailand. Can you come and work with us and do this in Thailand? And it was actually the folks at the Ministry of Education in Thailand who decided that they wanted the 5E model instead of the 7E. The only difference, the two models are the same essentially, but what we've got is at engage stage, all you do at the engage stage with the 7E model is that you introduce the context. Then the eliciting, which is part of the engage at the in the 5E model, becomes the second E in the 7E model. Also, so then you've got in the 7E model, you've got engage and elicit, which you put together in the 5E model. Then with the 7E model, you've still got the explore, you've still got the explain. But then also at the elaborate stage, you divide it up into elaborate and extend, okay, or extend and elaborate. I forget now. I've just but so you're breaking up the elaborate into two stages, and that is that's fine, because again, what happens at the elaborate stage in the 5E model is the students consolidate their learning. They extend their learning and they apply their learning to solve the problem. And so that extend is still part of the 5E model. as but it's within elaborate. So the two models are essentially the same, but you've broken up two of the E's into two new E's, two separate E's, okay, to make it 7 instead of 5. So it's very similar. It's not very similar. It's the same. The students are going through the same learning process, okay, but it's 7 instead of 5.
I think that clears up our concerns regarding the 5E versus 7E model. So let's move on with a question from Eric Doria Alina. What do you think are the best ways to include PBL in mobile learning, e.g. using mobile apps or other digital tools, especially in physics subjects?
Okay, if you think of what you could be doing is say for example with the second model I introduced you to, the 4-stage model. What we did with a project I ran in Malaysia, as well as the project in Thailand, was that the teacher's PowerPoint, okay, had links to video, it had links to the activity sheets, it had links to the assessment rubrics, and so on. So what you could do is that PowerPoint becomes your page, your webinar, your web page, or your whatever app you're using. It becomes the page, and as the students progress through from one page to another, in other words, what would be one slide to another in the PowerPoint, they have the link to the video, which might be helping to introduce the problem to the students. They then go on to the next link, which might be asking them some questions, and they go to the activity sheet, which comes, so the link to the activity sheet. So the activity sheet comes up on the screen, and so the students are doing that activity so they can answer the questions, which is on the screen, the PowerPoint screen, or the PowerPoint slide, or what would be on the page in the app, and so on. So as they progress through the learning experience, they're having links to the video or the activity sheets or other links that they need to go to do, say, literature research, etc., etc. So you go through the same learning process, but you do it completely electronically. Okay, and we did that with the Malaysian project, but it was in terms of a PowerPoint with hot links to video, etc., etc., as you progress through. But that could easily be converted into an app which is done on screen. And in fact, the example that we developed, one of the examples that we used in Malaysia, because we actually did a similar project in Malaysia where we covered the whole of the lower secondary science curriculum in Malaysia using inquiry-based approaches, which included the 5E and the 4-stage PBL, that we used that model in Thailand, because we didn't have, dare I say it, as much budget. We just developed the PowerPoints and the activity sheets, but that could have been done as we did it in Malaysia. Okay, but we had more budget in Malaysia to be able to achieve that. So I hope that answers your question, but you go through the same learning process, but you're having those links, which takes you to the activity or video or whatever it is that you're using as the students go through the learning experience.
Yes, that's a very nice tip on how to create PowerPoint presentations. We'll move on to the question of Manolita Ramas Oligo. What does STEM mean to education process and culture of a school for students and educators? Are there any unintended results as we emphasize this idea of STEM?
Okay, I think that's again, it's a good question. I think what I would be always saying is that sometimes teachers feel that STEM is something that you can only do as an extracurricular activity, because very often teachers, for example, the teachers I'm working with now in Kazakhstan at the moment, their original idea with regard to STEM was projects. And doing big projects, integrated projects, which could only be done outside normal curriculum time. I want every student to be able to have these experiences. And the reason why I say that is that I want every student to have that opportunity to be able to think about and see the opportunities that by studying STEM subjects can lead to in terms of job opportunities in the future, so that they can have those aspirations to work in the world of STEM at whatever level they want to work at, or have the abilities to work at. And I think that that's really important. So I like to see STEM as something which we can do within our normal science curriculum, or mathematics curriculum, or technology curriculum. And I know that most schools don't have an engineering curriculum, but we can also give them that experience within our normal science or mathematics or technology experience. And so this is why we developed these resources in the way that we did, to help teachers in Thailand to be able to implement STEM in their normal science classrooms, normal science curriculum, in the normal time that they normally they had to teach the science curriculum. And therefore the students were not only getting an inspiring experience of science, because the teachers were teaching the normal curriculum for science, but they were doing it in real contexts, and their students were solving real problems. And that was in every subject, whether it be biology, chemistry, physics, earth science, etc. They were getting that same experience of real context, real problems to solve. And I think that's really important. And that makes STEM easier to implement, okay? Because it's within the normal curriculum. And but it just needs that sort of idea that we can do this to teach our normal curriculum, but at the same time, what we're doing is we're achieving all of those other things that we want to achieve today in our schools. We're introducing the students to STEM. We're developing the students' 21st century skills. We're developing their thinking skills. We're developing their deeper understanding of the subject within our normal time. So I think that, I know I've gone on, but I hope that, we look at this as a learning approach. See STEM as a learning approach that we can use in our science curriculum, we can use in our maths curriculum, within our normal teaching experiences. So don't look at it as something which is abstract. Look at it as something that we can really do in our normal classrooms every day, but we get there in small steps. Don't try and do it with every lesson, okay? Do it in small steps. Build and build and build the experiences. What we did in the UK, for example, when it got to that 4-stage model, then what teachers tended to do was they tended to try those things out, maybe with a club experience, because they were less used to the 4-stage model. So they might do it with a club to start with, to develop their confidence and competence of using it, and then they'd use it in the classroom. And they went through the processes step by step. So you can do it through active learning to start with in the classroom. Then you can implement the inquiry-based model, the 5E model I used. Then you can introduce the 4-stage model. And then if you wanted, you could look at ways in which you might do it in integrated ways across the curriculum. And again, the way they did it in the UK with teachers I was working with, they had schools in the UK often had theme days, and those theme days were collapsed timetable days where you could where they would run a project for a day, or in some cases a collapsed timetable week, and that gave ways in which, you know, it got departments working together and planning, you know, this problem-based learning experience. But you don't have to do that. You can do it in your normal classroom through context-based active learning experiences, which can be done in a single lesson, inquiry-based learning experiences like the 5E, which are also problem-based, which can run over a series of lessons. And don't forget using homework time as well, which might be to finish the explore stage before the explain, or to finish the elaborate in preparation for the evaluate. Okay. And even the evaluate can be done online, or it could be done with the students putting their posters or presentations or leaflets or whatever on the walls, and the students going in and assessing them and giving feedback during the lunch hour. So you can, you know, you can use the time that you have wisely and effectively to implement STEM in your normal curriculum time. Okay. Sorry, I hope I answered your question. I do apologize for being too detailed sometimes.
All right, Dr. Mark and Sir Ramon, I think we've already reached the time limit, so that will be our last question. We're very sorry for our dear teachers and viewers, but thank you very much for all the questions that you've commented on the comment section. We really appreciate all those questions. Of course, we'd like to thank Dr. Mark and Sir Ramon for the Q&A portion, and most definitely Dr. Mark for all your sharings. We've really learned a lot. Thank you, and message maybe for our dear KaSaMa teachers and viewers.
Well, thank you all for attending today. I really appreciate it. It's a Friday afternoon. It's an end of a long week, and so I really do appreciate your time today. I've sent the resources to the team, so those can be shared with you. What I've just realized is I forgot to send the unit guide. Okay, and I'll make sure that I send that as well, so that you have that, so that you can see what is being assessed. Okay, for the unit. Okay, so I hope that all of those resources will help you. Obviously, those are just examples, but I hope they provide exemplar models with regard to how we can implement problem-based learning in our normal classrooms. What I will always advise you is do things in small steps. Work together, work in teams, don't work alone. Okay, this is something I always encouraged when I was teaching in school, when I was a subject leader, whether I was a school leader. I really encouraged the working in teams, and I know that's encouraged in the Philippines. I do know that. So work in your teams, do things in small steps. Okay, maybe you have one experience, inquiry-based, problem-based learning experience in one unit, yeah, and then maybe in the future in another, and build and build and build towards further implementation.
All right, thank you very much. Truly inspiring and truly spectacular also. All right, so again, thank you very much. This is Ian Rubino signing off for the KaSaMa Teachers Community.